$1,549.68 a month. That's what changed for veterans with celiac disease, and almost nobody's talking about it. Because until May of 2024, celiac disease didn't have a VA rating code. Not a low one, none at all.
Erica here. When the schedule has no code for your condition, a rater rates it by analogy. They find something in the book that behaves like it and score you off that instead. And by VA's own account, the criteria celiac got rated under ran from 0 to 30%. 30 was the roof.
Look at what that meant in practice. You could be living on a prescribed diet, dropping weight you couldn't put back, anemic, and 30% was the most the book could say about you, $552.47.
And now?
Now there's a code with your name on it. Diagnostic code 7355 celiac disease, and the top rung is 80%. $2,102.15 a month.
Same disease, same body. The book just learned the word.
Here's the pattern underneath this, and it's the thing I want you holding on to. If you were rated for celiac before 2024, you were rated against a ceiling that doesn't exist anymore.
Nova, and how many people do you think have checked?
Not many. That's the whole reason we're doing this one.
Nova, before you lay out the rest, what actually gets somebody to that 80?
Professor Nakamura's at the desk to read the 3 tiers. Then the one phrase that decides 30 against 50, the test that has to happen before any of it counts, and the rule that stops you stacking celiac on top of everything else in your file. One thing before the next part, and then we move right on. If any of this is clicking, tap that like, hit subscribe, and ring the bell for the next one. It takes a second, it costs nothing, and it helps more than you would think. Professor Nakamura, what's malabsorption actually doing to a person?
Starving them at a table full of food. The gut lining flattens out, so the surface that's meant to take nutrients up isn't there anymore. You can eat perfectly well and still run short on iron, calcium, vitamin D, all of it.
Read us the 3 tiers.
30% is malabsorption syndrome with chronic diarrhea managed by a medically prescribed dietary intervention, a prescribed gluten-free diet, and without nutritional deficiencies. 50 adds the deficiencies, plus systemic manifestations, weakness and fatigue, dermatitis, swollen lymph nodes, low calcium, low vitamin levels, or atrophy of the intestinal lining shown on biopsy.
Nakamura, and 80?
80 is when it's taking your life apart, weakness that interferes with activities of daily living, and weight loss resulting in wasting and systemic manifestations, and anemia related to the malabsorption, and episodes of abdominal pain and diarrhea.
That's a lot of ands.
5 of them. Every element has to be true at once, which is why 80 is a real ceiling rather than a common outcome. But it exists now, and 2 years ago it didn't.
And there's nothing above it and nothing compensable below 30.
Correct. 3 evaluations, that's the whole code. I'd flag one thing because it's going to confuse people. VA's own announcement describes the range as 0 to 80. There's no 0% row in the celiac criteria. A 0 comes from a general rule elsewhere in the schedule when you don't meet the 30.
So somebody reading the press release and somebody reading the regulation come away with different books.
They do. Read the regulation.
Thank you, Professor. 3 tiers, all of them opening on the same 2 words, and a press release that doesn't quite match the law.
I want to slow down on the line between 30 and 50 because it's one phrase and it's worth almost $600 a month. Both tiers want the same thing at the front. Malabsorption syndrome, chronic diarrhea, managed by a medically prescribed diet. That part's identical.
And then 30% ends with 4 words that decide everything. So what separates 30% from 50%?
Which means 30% is the tier for somebody the diet is working for. You're managing it, your blood work looks reasonable, you're stable, that's genuinely good news medically, and it's the bottom rung on the ladder.
Liam, and 50 is for somebody the diet isn't fixing.
Right, still on the diet, still doing everything asked, and the deficiencies are there anyway, plus systemic signs. That's 50, $1,132.90 against $552.47.
Liam, that's $580.43 a month, and it turns on whether a word appears in your record.
That settles it for me, and here's why it matters practically. nutritional deficiencies aren't a feeling, they're a lab value. Iron, vitamin D, B12, calcium.
Erica, am I close in saying most people with celiac have had that blood work drawn at some point and never thought of it as claim evidence?
You're exactly right, and that's the thing worth taking away from this scene. The number that moves you from 30 to 50 is probably already sitting in a lab report somebody filed and forgot.
It's not new evidence. It's evidence nobody read as evidence. Professor Nakamura, does a condition usually get its own code, or is analogy the normal state of things?
Analogy is the fallback, and it's a blunt one. The schedule can't name every disease, so raters borrow. The trouble is you inherit the borrowed code ceiling along with its criteria.
Put the money on it.
Take a veteran whose celiac is genuinely severe, the wasting, the anemia, the weakness that gets in the way of ordinary daily life. Before May 2024, VA says the criteria they were scored against ran to 30%, $552.47.
And that same veteran, same symptoms, read against the code that exists today is looking at 80. $2,102.15 a month, $1,549.68 a month between those two, and let me finish that properly because it's over $18,500 a year. That's not a bump. That's a different life.
And nothing about the patient changed. That's what I'd want people to sit with. The medicine was always this bad. The book just couldn't say so.
Nova, and the middle rung isn't nothing either. 50% is $1,132.90, which is more than double the old ceiling on its own.
Thank you, Professor Nakamura.
I'll take the verdict and keep one caution on the record. A ceiling moving doesn't move anybody automatically. Somebody has to go and ask with the right evidence, and most people don't know there's anything to ask about.
There's a gate in front of all three tiers, and it's one sentence long. Note 1, an appropriate serum antibody test or endoscopy with biopsy must confirm the diagnosis.
That's not a formality. That's a locked door.
And it's where I'd expect the most claims to die, honestly. There's a lot of people who went gluten-free because it made them feel better, got told by a doctor it was probably a sensitivity, and never had the blood test or the scope.
Which is a real medical distinction, not VA being difficult. Celiac is an autoimmune disease with a measurable antibody signature and visible damage to the intestinal lining. Gluten sensitivity is a different thing.
And here's the cruel part of the timing. If you've already been off gluten for years, the antibodies can settle down and the lining can heal, so the test that would have proved it is harder to run now than it was before you got better.
So the advice is what? Go back and dig for the old result?
The old result, service treatment records, civilian gastroenterology, whoever first said the word celiac to you. If a serum antibody test or a biopsy happened at any point, that's the document the whole claim stands on, and it doesn't expire.
And if it never happened, that's a conversation with a gastroenterologist before it's a conversation with VA.
I want to push back before anybody starts adding numbers up, because celiac was put inside a fence the day it was created. Somebody with celiac, an irritable bowel, and an old bowel resection looks at their file and starts stacking. 30 plus 10 plus 20. That's not how this part of the schedule works.
Section 4.114 opens by listing a long run of digestive codes and saying don't combine these with each other. 7355 through 7357 is in that run. So you get one evaluation under whichever code reflects the predominant disability picture, and it can be elevated one step if the overall severity warrants.
Liam, and celiac was written into that list from birth, which tells you VA saw the stacking coming.
Am I close in reading that as the single most disappointing sentence in this whole code?
Liam, you are, and I'd rather people hear it from us than from a decision letter. But there's a second note that runs the other way.
Note 2. Where the predominant disability is malabsorption, the rater uses the greater evaluation between diagnostic code 7328 and celiac under 7355.
7328 is small intestine resection, and it's scored on undernutrition rather than on diet management. For some people, it pays better.
And the word is greater. The regulation instructs the rater to run both and take whichever is higher. That's a comparison you're entitled to, not a favor.
So the fence costs you the stacking, and the note hands back a second scoring path. That's a fairer trade than it first sounds.
Does the elevate one-step rule get applied before or after that comparison? Honestly, I'd have to check. Professor Nakamura, last one for you. What do people underdocument most with this disease?
The deficiencies. People treat a low iron or a low vitamin D as a separate little problem to be topped up, when it's actually the disease proving what it's doing. That's the evidence, and it gets managed instead of recorded.
So start there. Pull the blood work. Iron, vitamin D, B12, calcium, because that's the line between 30 and 50.
Before that, find the confirmation. The serum antibody test or the biopsy. Without it, the code can't be used at all, and it's the one document that doesn't age out.
Then get the diet actually prescribed. The criteria say medically prescribed dietary intervention, and there's a real difference between a doctor writing it down and you deciding to avoid bread.
That one's easy to fix and almost nobody does it. Ask at your next appointment.
And ask for the 7328 comparison in writing. The regulation tells the rater to take the greater of the two, so name it.
2 honest limits before we finish. I couldn't find any official source naming which code celiac was rated by analogy to, so we've given you VA's own range and not a code number.
And nothing in the rewrite tells us how a claim already pending in May 2024 gets handled. I'd rather say I don't know than invent a rule you'd act on.
Thank you, Professor Nakamura.
I'll leave you with the thing that stayed with me. For years, the honest answer to how bad is your celiac was capped at 30% by a book that had no word for it. That's fixed now. Go and use it.
If you only hold one thing from this, a rating you got before 2024 was scored against a ceiling that's gone.
And nobody writes to tell you when the book changes.
So hit subscribe if this was useful. It puts the next one in front of somebody still living under an old ceiling. A whole disease went unnamed in that book for decades. What's the benefit rule you found out about years too late? Find the test, pull the blood work, get the diet in writing. Look after yourselves.